Okay, hi guys. We're going to talk today about rebuttal and what are the mistakes that people are making it, and we're going to talk about the ways to practice it. You're going to get kind of a teaser of of the thing that I've been working on. How do you say about practicing rebuttal and how we can improve our practice of rebuttal. So we will do something collectively afterwards, which might be helpful for everybody. But as a way of starting, let's just get into the topic itself. So, like I mean, the point of how do you say refutation and rebuttal is oftentimes kind of like glanced over by the speakers in terms of that we oftentimes hear somebody like, and that's what I heard lots of times when I was judging you guys. You guys spend a way much time explaining what somebody's saying and what is it that you want to refute, rather in the other way around, which is explaining, giving me several reasons why something is untrue, which is what we're going to be practicing today. This coming up with several different reasons. But the problem of approaching rebuttal in the beginning is that rebuttal is more of a like combination of skills than a one skill in itself. And that's what I wanted to come across as the first point of this lecture, which means that when you're utilizing rebuttal, you're actually utilizing several of your skills at the same time, because that's just in a hectic situation of the debate. So at the same time, you're tracking the debate and you're tracking what somebody's saying. You're prioritizing out of these things that somebody's saying, what do you think is the most important? What do you think it should be refuted? Then you're also coming up with different reasons why something is untrue, and then you're like practicing the delivery part and time management part. So basically, my idea is breaking this down and breaking this down into like the exercise that would cover each of these, rather than trying to simultaneously do something like juggling, playing the trumpet and riding a bike at the same time, which I think is what people are trying to do at the moment. And then they're sad if they cannot do it at the best level, but it's not your fault, right? It's basically very hard to immediately go into the situation where you can immediately just go track, prioritize, come up with reasons and do everything at the same time. So I think this breakdown will be very important when we come to our practice itself. But for now, what we would want to do is just focus a bit on how do you say some of the mistakes that we see when people are refuting. So with that in mind, I will leave this intro aside and give it a chance to you guys, and then I'll swoop in with some of my observations as well.
Okay, so to start off with, a first common mistake that I noticed a lot of people do in refutation is identifying properly, like we have learned, what is a missing link in the other side, and then rather than disproving it, saying, they didn't prove it. That's an assertion. Now, that is a good start of a rebuttal. The problem with it is, A, it is not compelling. It is at best a symmetric claim that could also mean, okay, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. But B, the problem is most often these speakers have a second speaker, a closing team to extend on them that can fill in this link. So this is usually not the best way to guarantee that we are actually refuting an argument. Mm-hmm. What we do want to do is both point out the missing link and explain why it's wrong.
No, so just to add a point to that. Oftentimes, when you guys are like, you have to have a bit of a perspective from a judge perspective. Oftentimes, you are also wrong when you're claiming that something is not explained. You're kind of putting a. That's what people started to do, is like thinking that magically saying that something is not explained, the judge will then just scratch my paper, like whatever I wrote. But this guy told me it's not explained, so now no, he won or something like this. I pretty much like it's a useful information to remind the judge, but it's not as useful given the fact that if we have agreement that this person, if I'm a good judge, let's say that, and I know that they haven't proven something, and you also point out that they haven't proven something, there is a marginal benefit maybe reminding me of this. But if we have a disagreement where I think they have proven it to some extent, and you tell me that they are not proven it, I'm actually quite the opposite thing happens. I'm much more reaffirmed that you don't have a rebuttal and that you're strawmanning the other team. So I get less persuasiveness from your side as well. So insofar that you're evaluating that somebody hasn't proven something, you need to be very careful of, first of all, how do you say, being very, very critical. So it's never a case where they haven't proven anything. And oftentimes I hear in rebuttal, oh, they haven't proven this argument. No, dude, like they have proven something. They just haven't proven it to the extent that either you would wish for or the debate requires you to do. So in a sense, be very careful when you're doing this, because it's a double-edged sword of how people find it. Generally your response is persuasive, and the danger here, the most danger is mostly psychological, because if I think you're strawmanning their cases, and if I think you are not correct, and like I would, like if you would see me in person, I would be like, no, like I would nod my head, because which you can see on the camera if I have my camera turned off. The problem then becomes that all of the other things that you're saying are painted in this light, and I find you generally less persuasive, because I feel you are the speaker who is just dismissive, who is not really, how do you say, paying attention to what other people are saying. So you generally, with these sentences, you sometimes lower your overall persuasiveness, even though that was completely not your intention, especially in this day and age when everybody's just overusing this and judges are just sick of it, because like just do something more with this. So that's a danger of doing this even sometimes. So if you had to pick, I would rather, like I almost never use this. Like very rarely I use this, and it's usually in tandem with what Hadar said. So that's the additional thing that I wanted to comment.
As a follow-up on that, when you do answer the other side, and again, to not get judges led off by actually making a straw man of the other side, it's important to know that you actually answered the argument as well as the analysis the other side gave, and not just the headline or what you think the argument was. I'll give you even an example from a debate that I've judged just today. In the motion, this House would let technocrats make legislations on criminal justice rather than elected officials. Government team made the argument that technocrats are less prone to bad pressures both from lobbyists and from the public, and are likelier to make the right decision because they're not just thinking short-term of their elections, but actually long-term on what will reduce harm. Opposition gave the response that, but we can also just have technocrats advising to politicians. We don't need them to make decisions instead of politicians, which is a very good rebuttal to a different argument. A not so well-attentioned judge would have maybe bought it, but considering that the analysis wasn't to say technocrats know better than politicians, the analysis wasn't about the information that they have. If this was the analysis, then yes, saying they could advise is a sufficient rebuttal. But it was about their incentives. They are less prone to pressures. This is not something you can solve by just having them as advisors. So this is an example to show that it is important that we don't only answer the headline or the bottom line of the argument, but we actually look at what are the reasons the other side gave for their argument and answer those.
No. Additionally, there comes something that we usually like to call like break down rebuttal into two categories. My advice is also, I will give it to Artem to forward it to you. In the judge training program, Harish explains this much better than I will now, just because I don't know, he's much better at this than I am. But what we try to divide the rebuttal into is this competing rebuttal and contradicting rebuttal. The difference in these two is like that most of the people are not aware with the difference, and the problem is that can sometimes lead to you thinking that you actually rebutted something, but actually, how do you say, provided me something else. But let me explain to you what this means. Competing rebuttal usually entails that you're not refuting the logic that somebody's saying. You're just saying there is alternative thing that this person, that this actor would do, or alternative thing that will happen. So after that, I'm not convinced that they're wrong. I'm just convinced that you also might be right. So for example, if one side claims that China will, how do you say, act in a certain way, and usually people in their rebuttal come up and say, no, China will how do you say, trigger economic sanction, trigger economic response if we, I don't know, put military in Taiwan or something like this. And it's like, no, China will not do this. China will instead, how do you say, send the, how do you say, I don't know, protest note or something like this. You're not refuting that they would not do this thing that I claim that they're going to do. You're pretty much just telling me that there's something else that they might do instead. this sounds like you're actually giving me a rebuttal that is persuasive, which, as I said, it's not completely wrong, it's not completely useless. The problem is I have now two scenarios which me as a judge can find persuasive. So you haven't moved the goalpost in a way that I'm not convinced in their argument. It's you move the goalpost where I'm thinking, are you right or are they right when you're claiming this? And this is the danger. This is danger. Contradicting rebuttal would literally attack their logic and claim how they say, no, China would not do economical, I don't know, response because of three reasons. Here is why they cannot do it, blah, blah, blah. Not why what they would do instead or what is the alternative thing that these people would do. This comes for any actor, usually, that people are talking about, like right wing, Trump, how do you say, feminist movement or something. Is people usually tend to confuse these two things. And as I said, it's not completely useless. It's just there's a risk that the judges just it's kind of competing rebuttal is kind of a hidden extension, not extension, hidden argumentation, because you're giving me positive material of something else that might happen rather than refuting exactly what is the other person's logic. And sometimes there is a shout and a claim to just remove that from the part of rebuttal and actually leave it towards your analysis, your extension, your argumentation. One more reason why that is sometimes the better option, it's because of the time difference, right? You're rebutting, you're refuting an argument that came, which means that usually people spend 1.5, 2 minutes explaining why their thing is true. If you're in your rebuttal giving me one or two reasons in maybe like 15 to 30 seconds max, because you're always doing rebuttal in that short period of time, you're not spending 3 minutes to rebut one specific point. Maybe you are, but in most cases you aren't. That means that even insofar that there are now two scenarios the judge can be persuaded by, it's much more likely the judge still is persuaded by the argument that came, because there's more time, more logic spent on this, versus your rebuttal, which has some logic, obviously, but it's less developed given the fact that it's framed as a rebuttal in that sense. So competing and understanding when are you actually, how do you say, breaking down somebody's logic versus when are you giving me an alternative thing that can happen. This is something that needs to be, how do you say, clear. I know this is a very confusing topic in itself, just because it's a nuanced thing, and it's the best thing that we can do is actually I will try to point this out to you when we will do our exercise more. I don't know if Kadar has more comments on this topic.
Yeah, actually, sorry, Artem, I have a question.
Just very quickly, Russian speakers may be familiar with it because it is called constructive rebuttal in Russian normally. That's the same concept.
Yeah, so I was going to say that the version that we call it in Tel Aviv is competing analysis or parallel analysis. In any way, every circuit seems to have their names for it, but the important thing to note here, and I very much agree with what Milos says, I think the way to understand it also goes through, it's not just when actors do more than one thing, but sometimes there could be reasons that something is true and reasons that something is wrong, and they will not actually be directly clashing. I think an intuitive example of this might be something that I've seen in a debate a while ago at Cambridge. Motion was, I don't remember the exact wording, Milos will probably remember it better because he said it, but basically term limits to a one term limit per prime minister or president.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's...
Yeah. Basically, Prime Minister gave the analysis that we need to make a term limit because people don't have a free enough informed decision when they are choosing someone who gets re-elected, because they are being in a way brainwashed. This person has name recognition, they had many years of controlling the media, the education, people know them as the leader, they have a bias towards the status quo, etc., etc. To which comes leader of opposition and responds, but there are many reasons why people would be able to make a critical decision and an informed choice about this. Probably the opposition says bad things about this person and criticizes them and shows the bad things that they've done. Probably the media criticizes them as well, if not the local media that they control, and foreign media. Probably we also have some memory as voters and so on and so forth. I'll put it now as a question for you. Can anyone tell me what's the problem with this rebuttal, which is not necessarily bad, but is not yet refuting the argument? Any takers?
Yes, I think it doesn't refuting directly the argument, because they both can be in the same time, and yeah.
Yeah, so both are true in a way. As a judge, I would think that, okay, there is name recognition and also there is external criticism. So now you're leaving it for the judge to decide which is likely to have a higher impact on people, which is likely to impact their decision and their free informed choice more. A better rebuttal, and what I ended up doing eventually, is taking the direct logic of Prime Minister and saying, look, under their best case, if we say that people do have name recognition towards this person, they've known them a lot, etc., the problem is this still doesn't take away their agency and their informed choice. All politicians inherently have name recognition. Celebrities have name recognition. This doesn't mean that people cannot be critical and still think, while I know this person's name, I can still think that they are not a god. And the difference is there's more work to do with this. But the point is to take the direct logic that the government gave, not giving it competing alternative logic, and showing why it's flawed.
Yeah, that's a very good example. I couldn't come up with it on the top of my head, but yeah, no, that's exactly illustrating the point and why is it important. And the fact of the matter is, most of the people confuse the two. And if I say in the lower mid rooms, most of the people do more competing rather than contradicting. And as you go higher, people go more contradicting rather than competing. So you need to start, first of all, noticing when you're doing it. So at least after, for example, the good practice for you is at least to make yourself aware what you did. You don't have to change it. Okay, debate, like let's say you have a practice debate, or let's say you have something else, or how do you say, tournament or something like this. Like save your papers or save at least some bullet points or something like this, and then afterwards just analyze it. What did I do here? Was this competing analysis or was this a contradicting rebuttal in a sense? Just to make yourself aware, because your brain doesn't inherently differentiate between these two. Like it's a very, and especially in the heat of the moment. And the first step towards making this better is starting to notice this with yourself and starting to notice this with others. And you will not be able to necessarily immediately notice it in the heat of the debate, even though we can say this to you 100 times, repeat this lecture, unless you go and after how do you say, your speech or something, is just have a little thought of what happened and what did you do. That's the only way for you to learn. You will not otherwise get the concept. To be honest, even though you get it on a surface level, and I know you understand the logic, the point is, and that's why usually the lectures, and I'm going a bit meta, usually the lectures are useful only so far, because lots of us know everything, how do you say, logically, in the, how do you say, logically once when we're talking in this setting, like it's very relaxed, you're having an evening, Friday evening. But when it comes to the debate, it's literally your monkey brain taking over and be like, oh, what do I do? I have to rebut, I have to whip, I have to do all of these things. It starts to panic, and they just, in order to make yourself survive that and just survive through the speech and do what the best that you can, you turn off some of these functionalities. So you forget some of these key messages and key stuff. And without having a reminder for yourself, or at least increasing your intuition, you will continue to do the same thing. So that's the important thing. So even if you understand it on surface level, that's the reason why people continue to make mistakes. And that's, by the way, true for anything that you want to improve in debating, not just this, but this is particularly important because it's not very obvious, especially not very obvious if you're not deeply thinking about this. Okay.
Next one on the list. Do note that when you do answer the other side analysis, answer the strongest version of their analysis. So usually speakers have some extent to which they prove their case. And it is tempting to answer the softest version of their case, to answer the easiest to answer version of it. Usually you want to do the opposite. You do say, if they didn't prove the strong version, they didn't prove it to the extent that they claim it. But even if they do, here's why it's still false. I'll give you a classic example of why I see this common mistake, and I think it happens often in like when people use the according to this logic kind of rebuttals. This is where it's most common. Sometimes in a debate about banning some product, like, I don't know, whether it is banning cigarettes or legalizing all drugs, the team that is for banning or against legalizing is going to say that this is addictive and therefore it harms free choice. And every time, I swear, in every single debate, I'm going to hear the side that is for legalization saying, but chocolate is also addictive. Yeah, but despite chocolate probably being addictive, I think it is fair to say that it is not on the same level as cigarettes or heroin. And you don't make yourself sound more persuasive when you are taking a ridiculed version of the other side's analysis and answering that rather than the strongest version. What you want to do is say, even if it is addictive, people are aware of this when they opt into this. People have support networks to help them get out of this. And you know what? The mere fact that it's addictive doesn't even mean that it takes away their choice. It means that there is an added pressure. But at the point at which they are addicted, it's still their choice to take it. It might be that it is still good for them and that being left with the addiction and no ability to fulfill it is even worse. There are many ways to think of it. But the point is, we don't just want to say, everything is addictive, so obviously nothing is too addictive to be legal. This can go for any other sort of analysis. But the point is, you don't want to just analogize to an ad absurdum sort of level the other side logic. You want to answer the more nuanced version of their case, even if they didn't make it.
I usually also like to call this like have a strategy of like layered rebuttal, which means as I told you previously, rebuttal and generally anything that you do debate is like risk management, which means there is a risk the judge didn't buy something or did buy something. So insofar that you want to do some of this logic, and it sometimes can be persuasive, like chocolate, not necessarily a chocolate example, but like let's say usually when people talk about like people don't have enough information to make this choice or something like this, you can say, for example, but like that's true for most of the choices that we make in our life. And that's not something that we prohibit the choice by. For example, like you don't have all of the information when you're choosing the school, when you're choosing your job or whatever, but we still allow you to make that choice and nobody else is making it for you. But what I usually like to do is just have a second layer of response, which would be even if, which would be a bit stronger. So I'm like hedging my bets. If I can win with the short one, fine. If I can win with the second one, which is harder, even better. And it's also making it harder on the other side to rebuild after that, because they kind of have to answer to both of them to be able for their case to survive. But yeah.
All right. And last common mistake that I'll discuss is answering an example rather than answering the case that the other side brought to the table. So I think a common thing people do is kind of when other speakers give analysis, they will often give an analogy or an example to how their case takes place. And it's very tempting to answer the example. It's easy to grasp on, and it's usually smaller and less analyzed, and it doesn't disprove anything. So the point to remember here is, even if you refuted an analogy that I happen to use, an intuition pump, the logic behind it can still stand. Like, I can give a principled case for the obligation to reparations, say, and explain why, if money unjustly moved from one person to another, and therefore this person now has in their pockets money that they shouldn't have had, and another person should have had money that they don't, the only way to fix the injustice would be via reparations, and I could use it to justify, say, I don't know, reparations for post-colonial countries or whatever, and I might use an example, an intuition pump, of things from the day-to-day, like from the legal system sort of reparations that are more intuitive to people. And then often people will take my intuition pump and start rebutting this and showing why in this case there are sometimes exceptions, etc. And when they do that, they forget that I started with giving a general logical explanation for why the case for reparations principally stand. So even if you refute one example, it doesn't refute the case. And it's important to notice that because judges do.
Yeah. No, sometimes it's even a strategy to bait the other team. That's me and Yanko do that all the time. Once we have a couple of reasons or maybe a couple of examples, we use one of them, which we know that people are gonna get like triggered by or something like this, which they're gonna refute and then forget all of the other things that need to be refuted. So the rebuttal is a game of prioritization. You have 3 minutes that are very limited, like 3 minutes at best, right? Like you also have your intro, you have other things that you need to do. You don't have as much time to cover everything or something. So prioritization needs to be the key, how do you say, thing. And how you tackle things is never, how do you say, in the middle of the logic. It's mostly trying to cut it much higher and cut it in the premises level or something like this. But the last one that I wanted to add, which is again from my experience from listening to you guys struggle a lot, and it's not just you. That's most ESL speakers and sometimes EPL speakers. You spend way too much time explaining to me what the other person's point was. You need to be better at this, and I think that's the practice of tracking per se. So I saw the extreme examples, for example, in some of the debates, on one of the debates that I judged you, where some of the people were explaining to me the point that somebody says more like 30 seconds or 40 seconds. If you go with that logic for 30 seconds, you're explaining to me, not even going to what this is wrong, but just explaining what they said. You're not doing yourself any favor. That's that time of the speech for you, because me as a judge, first of all, I already know what they said. Second of all, I'm not writing anything. Like, I'm just noting what are you refuting, and that's it. Like, I wrote it in first 5 seconds because I kind of understand. So you need to be more efficient with this, because if this is true, if you really take 30 seconds and 40 seconds, then maximum number of things that you can refute is 3, and that's severely limiting your ability to refute things, because you need to have at least 30 seconds then to refute the thing that you just now explained what it is. The best thing to do is to start, how do you say, tracking what other people are saying better in less words, and like making it, or even writing it word by word so you can read it out, because that helped me out when I was struggling with this. Because like as an ESL speaker, what you usually come into, and that's what I experienced a lot, which is you have a feeling that people don't understand you. So sometimes you tend to overcompensate for that. You really want somebody to understand you, what things are. And sometimes you need to give this up, right? Let the judge track fully what you mean. It's better for them to not fully understand what you're rebutting, but it's almost never going to be the case that they don't understand anything that you're rebutting. Rather than, it's much more important that I understand what you are actually saying in the contrast to that, rather than me understanding their point through and through. So it can be maximum 1 sentence, maximum 5 seconds per this. If you're spending more 5 seconds explaining their point, there's something wrong there that needs to be looked at. So you need to return to it. It's a huge waste of time that you need to practice more to combat. I don't know if you have anything else, Hadar, to add there.
Not much. I think it is valuable to make sure that the judge knows what it is you're responding to, but usually it will be enough to just use either the headline or the bottom line that the other speaker used. This is what judges write to themselves. When you give like your roadmap or whatever, they write the headlines so they'll know what you're referring to.
Yeah. The way to get better at this, as I said, is to practice tracking more. So first, like obviously judging more helps with this as well, because like you're writing more down, but tracking itself is a skill that people are lacking, like being able to take notes very quickly whilst also multitasking, writing your extension, but also, how do you say, taking in what other people are saying. And that's something that we would not fully practice today, but kind of. So we can go to the exercise if you want, Hadar.
Yeah, sure. You want to explain it?
Yeah, I will explain it. So this is what I want us to do now. So I will post a speech. I will post like a debate, full debate, but like we will just watch the Prime Minister's speech, nothing more. We will give you 15 minutes so you can watch on your own pace. We don't watch it together because some people might not understand something, so you want to return or something. So we take as much, not as much time as you want because you have 15 minutes, but take it slowly. If you don't understand the point, return the couple of seconds. That's completely fine. Like if you're not done, we can even do it for 20 minutes. It doesn't matter. The only important thing that you need to do during this thing is to have two pieces of paper. One piece of paper, well, you will track pretty much everything, what people are saying, like not as I said, not word by word, but like main points, like here is the first point, here is the second point, third point, here is some logic or something. It's in the separate paper where you will, after you've done watching the speech, sort your thoughts, sort what you have on this paper by priority. In terms of this is the most important thing that I think if I were to rebut this, I would first rebut this, I would second rebut this, I would third rebut this. So in the level that you find is the most important thing to rebut in that speech. And after we return, we will comment on what people have said, and you will see our logic. The purpose of this, we will do this exercise with you together. So the speech, we haven't done it for particularly that reason, so we can simulate what we want to show you in here. So you can see and learn from the intuition that we have. After we've done commenting on the prioritization, we will pick top 3, 4, or 5, however much time we have, stuff, and we will come up with several independent reasons for why this thing is false, or how you can refute it. And we will give ourselves tasks like, let's figure out 3 or 4 reasons why the first thing that we found most important is important. So it's a couple of layers of exercise. The point of this exercise is to deconstruct rebuttal into its smaller categories of skills. So as I said, to deconstruct juggling, learning to ride a bike or something. So let's first juggle. Then after we've done juggling, then we will play the trumpets together. And then afterwards we can ride the bike together. So that's my point of this exercise that I want to do. That's what I want to hear from you. So just during this, obviously you can think of the responses passively, but most of the things that I want you to focus on is what is the person saying on one, and afterwards, what do you think out of these things that person has said? How would you order? What are the top 5 things that you would refute in an ideal setting? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll post the speech now, and then we can set the timer. So, as I said, it's the Prime Minister speech from this. I'll post it. Prime Minister speech. The motion is pretty simple, which is the important part that I found. So you don't have to boggle down. So let's first do some let's just comment if somebody has an unclarity on the motion itself. So the motion is this House would allow states to use mercenary forces in combat roles in military operations. Does everybody know? Like, you know what mercenaries are? Does anybody have any definitional questions that they want to get out of the way?
So basically, this is like not only a military like classical type of it, and also like the ones that you pay for, right?
Yeah. So we allow countries to pay for. So as I said, United States pays Blackwater, or however they call now, Academy, to conduct operations in Iraq or wherever. Okay.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. And as I said, military operations, obviously, combat roles, like the only difference between combat roles, that means that they will be allowed to shoot. So what is excluded in this debate, the first thing that comes to mind is that the opposition doesn't have to defend no mercenary use, is that opposition can defend and say, yeah, we would not allow combat roles, but they can be security guards, they can help us with training, they can help us with some of these things, right? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. It's something that comes from the motion. So the burden, as remember, the burdens that we've talked about, burden of the op is not to defend no use of mercenary forces, because we are kind of the op from this point of view. We just have to defend that they should not be in combat roles. So they should not, how do you say, engage the enemy, shoot the enemy, do something like that to the enemy, but guard, be a security guard, train, or something else that is not combat role, they can do. Military operations are obviously defined as you like military operations. I don't know what else to define there. Okay, if that is clear, then let the 15-minute commences. We will be lenient if somebody has an internet connection or issue or something like this. But yeah, let's aim to be done at, so now it's 8, in your time it's 8:41. So that means 56, right? Let's say 57 because it's already been a while. So 20:57, that's when we meet back. Okay, guys, good luck and talk to you soon. Okay, shall we start like unpacking things? Yeah. So what you have just now witnessed is a classic EPL speech that you will get in most of the time, which sounds super persuasive and super nice, but it's actually quite bullshit in most cases. And it's actually good. Like one of the reasons why I pick this speech usually when I practice this is to demystify some of these EPL speakers. For example, in this case, he got an 83 for this speech, which I think is a bit too high. Like, I mean, it's not a bad speech, it's not a terrible speech, obviously. But there's so many logical leaps and stuff that we want to comment on and notice. So, does anybody want to tell me? Whoever has the courage to first say, what do you think is the most important thing that Papa John said that we should rebut? Let's start like that. Top one. Or a thing, like if you haven't gone to a point to rank them fully, I understand it's a bit of a tough exercise, maybe more time should have been given, but then just give me one of the important things that you think should be done.
Yeah, for some reason, I think that the important thing is that what is the difference between when a country hires its own military versus when the country hires another military, and people know this, and it's like the same presence.
So how do you mean? What is the point? What is the point actually that he's making here?
Uh,
Can you explain to me?
that people wouldn't be comfortable with the US military in its borders, but why would they be by the hired mercenaries?
Exactly. No, I fully agree. Fully agree. So one of the main points, so if I had to break it down, is to say he's giving two main points in the speech. One is on effectiveness, another one is on accountability, right? So that's how I would break down my responses as well, right? And within these two subgroups, he has sub chapters, sub reasons that we need to now rank. So this one falls under the first category, why this military will be more effective. And he gives three reasons, I think, there. First is what you said, which is how do you say, it will antagonize the US cannot use this in so many countries in the Middle East because it will antagonize them. It will antagonize these countries, but they can send the mercenary. Okay, that's one. I agree. That's maybe one of the most important ones because it's especially he mentioned it first. But there is something more important within that section. There is like, do you want me to outline the other two things? Okay, so what are the other two things that he mentions? Within this, why private militaries will be more effective, because
Also because of the location, he said.
Okay, so it's the location. Okay, yeah, there's a proximity. They have location. They have knowledge on the ground. What else?
He said that not all countries may afford to like fastly deploy own forces in the right place. So it was like about money, resources, and it is not clear why in situation with mercenary forces those countries would afford to have them in the right place.
Okay, let's write it in the chat. Let's write it in the chat. So that's effectiveness. So what I'm explaining to you now, and this is why I want you to bear with me and follow. This is how I would track. So if somebody is telling you many different things, you need to package them into more like higher categories. So as I said, first package them into highest categories. We said one is effectiveness, another one is accountability. So for effectiveness, we said one point is, how do you say, how do we sum it up quickly? So how do we sum it up in a very effective way? So US cannot have as many bases because it will antagonize them. So easier to use. Like if somebody, Hadar, if you have a suggestion, just pop right in. I'm also thinking off the top of my head how would I organize it?
Easier to get local cooperation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can I try?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add
Hello?
about
Can't hear you if
effectiveness
you
of
speak.
that. This is firstly how like we collect people in army. Yeah, we just take our people from our country. Maybe I don't want to go to the army and they not effective work like they can't be effective army. So, but when we use people who like aim it on that and uh, make it dream for that, they it's more effective. So they can more effective work at war, at some actions, yeah, war actions. And second, it's long-term effectives. Long terms mean that forces will stay. No, that forces can be not from our country. So when that soldiers will return, uh, when we use our army and that soldiers return in our country, it's a little bit problem with their uh, like um, like they can be confused. They can be have some I don't know how it will be on English. They can be harmed, but when we use like machinery people, it's not our problem. So
Yeah, so
that is
that's
long-term effective.
the body bag effect that he was talking about. So I summed it up in 5 points. If we find something missing, let me know. But I'll post it in the chat and let's read it, and then let's organize it based on priority and try to rebut some of these things. So effectiveness, he has 5 points that are spread around his speech all around. One is easier to get local cooperation. That's the first point we mentioned. Second one, mercenaries have advantage because of location and knowledge of the ground. That's the second point. Third point is they can be defending oil wells about the U.S. That's a specific example, but yeah. Fourth one, body bag effect. People don't want to intervene when we should. And fifth one, we can rapidly mobilize them. Okay, so we have. Am I missing something? Is there something more on effectiveness that he's saying?
One small thing, I'll say it now, we can leave the rebuttal to this later, though I think the rebuttal is accessible. He also mentions that this leads to increased deterrence when there are multiple PMCs that you know are associated with the US, because the US has a very big deterring effect. And that when you have many PMCs across the world, you have more deterrence of feeling that they are in your backyard.
Okay, I don't think he explained this at all, but yeah, he maybe mentioned.
I don't think
Yeah.
he explained most of the other stuff as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 6 things now. Let's rank them in order of which we find this is important or not important. So a quantity of complex. So his preemptive was mostly about abuse, right? So if a country wants to abuse, they would abuse anyway, which is dubious best. But I would not classify it as effectiveness. I would classify it as the second point, which is accountability. But yeah, here is how I classify effectiveness. So we cannot we do not have time to rebut all to the same extent, and possibly don't have time to rebut all to begin with. Let's prioritize. Which one of these do you think is the most important to rebut? Like out of these top 6, you can give me a number. You don't have to read the full thing. And obviously, there is no correct answer. I have my own feeling. Maybe Hadar has a different feeling. It's a discussion, guys. So there is no just say it. It's not a wrong answer. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So the first one is important. I would claim that it's not the most important. I don't know if you agree, Hadar.
I agree.
Yeah. For me, and let's, in order for the sake of time, I'll just say what I think. In terms of combat forces, 2, 4, 4. Yeah, okay, there's a couple of fours. I agree. I agree that the fourth one is the most important, which is the body bag effect. He also spends maybe a bit more time on it than the other points as well. And it's wow. Can somebody tell me why is it the most important? I just gave you some general things, but
You just haven't explained why exactly location, mobilization, time, and whatsoever is important in solving the conflict. But
oh yeah,
according
but
to this point, it is obviously that if we can exclude the body bag effect, it will have the influence on the solving the problem.
I'm asking a bit of a different question. My question is, why is this the thing that can harm you the most as opposition? Because that's how you should be making these decisions. So it's not just randomly, I'm making the important thing to learn here is the thought process, right? The thought process of me, and each of us has the intuition that it's like, not each of us, most of us has the intuition that it's four, that it's number four. You need to understand why. Like, why is that the most harmful? Why is that the thing that is most harmful towards your opposition case?
Because it's hard to rebuttal that, like, we okay if we send our people to die.
Exactly, because to some extent, again, it's true. It's one of the hardest. It's one of the hardest thing to rebut, right? So we need to tackle it most. Like all of the other ones, you can tackle very fast, very quickly with some of the responses. But this one is likely to stick. This one is likely to be something you kind of have to trade off. Is it possible for us to fully defeat this point in its absolute sense?
I think yes, because we can say that our soldiers, we can send them actually, but the mercenaries from there can have something like they can also hate us, United States. They can hate I don't know, international imperialism, and they don't want to go and to sell themselves.
Okay. I mean, it's hard because to some extent it's a true point, right? Like we are averse to some of the interventions or something like this. So, Halar, do you think it's the best to just go in depth in rebutting this one, or just rank them a bit more and then go into rebutting?
I think my strategy in this is to start by mitigating while being aware that what I'm doing is mitigation and not a knockdown, but then explaining why it's enough. So the burden push here, I think, is important. Yeah, comparatively speaking, it is easier to get political support for hiring PMCs than our own troops. But I don't need all of our own troops. I don't need all of the soldiers in the world. I only need that many soldiers to make interventions happen. And for this, I don't need to have unlimited political capital. I need to have enough. That's my burden. And I think showing that this is a burden I can fulfill is something that can be done through mitigations, by showing why we are able to get the political support.
Sure. That's one response. Does anybody have a second response? That would be my first response.
Maybe like those PLCs are likely to hire the same people who would go into the army, so they're still like our people, likely.
So that would be my second point. I would frame it a bit differently. That is definitely the point that I want to convey. But the way that I would present it is to say, to be honest, if death is captured, so this only has the, how do you say, this body bag effect only has the, how do you say, impact if people are knowledgeable about what's happening or something like this. So insofar that this knowledgeable thing can happen, like, and if it's shown on the screen, like he's giving the example of Mogadishu, you have the example of PMCs getting killed and dragged in Fallujah, for example, in Iraq, and people still backlashing and thinking why we need to pull back from Iraq or something like this. But what is one more response that we can get there? Because it's effectiveness. Keep in mind that this is a broader point about the effectiveness. Is it likely, so that's my question, is it likely that you can send a PMC to solve the situation in Afghanistan or Iraq, or just send them and that's it? Is that a likely scenario that would ever occur? Keep in mind that I cannot see chat because I'm yeah, military drones are also a good point, because that limits. That would be my third response. But the other thing is that it's unlikely that if the conflict requires that conflict can be solved just by sending PMCs. Like I cannot see, other than something very minor, which then limits their impact severely. In most of the cases where you have a complex situation, where you have Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever conflict that is not like very minor, you would still need your troops. It's not just manpower, it's just logistics, it's, how do you say, oversight, control, and all of these things. You can't hand everything towards the PMCs. Not how it works. It's usually that PMCs have a specific task that is delegated by this person. So it's very unlikely. Like PMCs, wherever they were used in the past, they were used in tandem with the military. So that point is kind of not fully as relevant towards most major impact that he wants to convey. Okay, so we tackled couple of responses that we can get. Do we want to go in depth more, or how do we want to proceed then? Alar, what do you think?
I think we can move on to the, like, maybe another piece of analysis to answer from this, and then I'd say to the next point.
Yeah. But the point that I want to illustrate is what usually happens. See, we found 4 or 5 responses to this, and this point can have 4, 5, 6, 7 responses handed to it. If you give just one response, it sometimes cannot be enough. But if I am the leader of the opposition, and I give 4 or 5 reasons why this is not true, Deputy Prime Minister is completely fucked, because he needs to answer all of my 4 points, which means that I'm very well protected against rebuilding of their case, which is very important and crucial. To waste his time also, he cannot do other things. Like, notice, like, if we pile on this point, he has a very tough decision to make. Either he drops this point completely, which is the most important point in his speeches, or he spends so much time defending himself against this, and then he cannot defend anything else. So and we can do it pretty effectively just by explaining in the first, like in the delivery part, talking about, okay, they've talked to you about the body bag effect, where people do not want to intervene when they should. First of all, a couple of responses there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. You can have even a 5th one. We refute the premise that we should intervene more. In most of the cases, interventions are terrible and horrible and led to horrible outcomes. Blah blah blah. And then let him respond to all 5 or 6 of these reasons. He will get just overwhelmed, and you will probably win that point on face value. That's the point. And usually, the intuition of people is just, I have one answer, so I answered it, so let me move on. And that's what I wanted to illustrate here as well. Okay, but let's move on to the second. What is the second most important point that we think we should refute on the effectiveness? I think there's a couple of candidates. I think that 2 of them can be there. Any ideas, guys? As I said again, just shoot. No hard answers. No correct answers. 1 or 5. Anybody else? What do you think, Kadar? I'll let you.
I'm leaning 1 and 2.
Yeah, me too. I'm leaning 1 and 2. 5th one, let me explain why not 5th one. Mostly because he didn't spend as much time on this. Because like obviously it's a good point if he can show, but also he didn't really prove it. So in that sense, like I would focus on the other 2. Maybe I would be leaning more towards 2 than the 1. But yeah. But so how do we tackle 2? Let's say let's pick 2 randomly. Well, what are the answers towards 2?
Because you still can get information when you aren't mercenary, because Well, can you look at the question again? Yeah. So knowledge on the ground, because even like people who specialize on this stuff in military can know the same amount of things the mercenaries know. Like there can be specialists.
Yeah. So that's a mitigation point, but it's a good mitigation point. I think we can get translators, consultants, collaborators, especially when we talk about that. In most of the cases, this has been used by, how do you say, this has been used by the United States where we talked about this. So that can give you a lot of the context out of the way. But there is a second response that I think it's even better.
Maybe like again about that in reality all conflicts are together with domestic and mercenary troops, and domestic forces also have like all these stuff like knowledge and other
let's
things.
let's think about it logically. So let's say that you want to invade Iraq, your United States. How does this play? Like you hire an Iraqi PMC? What the fuck is he talking about? I would ask him this question. In most cases, mercenaries are coming from your own country. Like mercenaries are usually retired veterans from the United States, or like Foreign Legion, or whatever, however it's called. It's Europeans. Like where are these very vast networks of Iraqi PMCs that you can use that have such a huge knowledge on location and on the ground? That's my question. Like I don't think that exists in most cases. And even if that exists, like it's like, why can't we hire some of these people? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just don't know those problems, but why you don't hire people from there?
Who do you hire and who hires them? That's the point. Like you need to have a company that then goes and recruits an Iraqi soldier specifically to be able to invade Iraq as a PMC, which just sounds unlikely to happen, right? Like that's like that person needs to be super well trained, like in the military. So that needs to be a person who defected from an Iraqi army, or his I don't know, like I don't know in any other, or immigrated. So it's very limited amount of people who can how do you say, fulfill this and make this a huge point, right? Like obviously I can still concede and say, yeah, maybe they have two guys that they hired which are defectors or something, so now they're in their own army. But first of all, that's unlikely and it's never happened before in real life. So it's like a point that is good in theory but never good in practice. But second of all, as I said, like the US doesn't hires US mercenary companies. That's as simple as that. And it's usually, as I said, US based guys. Call it however they want. Like they might be racist, which they are, right? Like they don't want Iraqis in their midst. I don't know. Do you agree, Hadar? Or
I think it's also fairly easy to explain why. Like, A, probably you don't trust them to not be double agents. B, they probably don't want to turn against their own people. But C, note his own analysis when he describes these people as being liked by the locals and trusted. The sort of people who will be trusted by Iraqis will not fight against Iraqis. So even if he's managing to get some sort of a local rebel group to be some PMC or whatever, if it's a thing, it's likely to be someone who is in the hiding, not someone who is very well connected, someone who really is someone who's probably underground there as well. So probably most of his advantage is not a realistic thing. You cannot have both, someone who fights for you and is locally involved.
So this rebuttal works both on the first, second, and the fifth points, actually.
I think those points are connected. I think this is generally part of the things
They're quite the same, I think, actually.
So Milos is going to rejoin us soon, hopefully. Something that you notice, I think, in a lot of these speeches, I don't think they are the same. I think they have an underlying premise to most all of them, which is the characterization of who these PMCs are, which is completely asserted. And if you take down this premise, you essentially take down 3 or 4 mechanisms from the argument.
Sorry, I lost my connection. So, yeah. I also lost the 6 things. So can somebody just copy and paste what I wrote?
Yeah, I'm on it.
Yeah, it's sorry, my internet is crap apparently. So I didn't hear your last point, Hadar. So I don't know what you said, but
so we just discussed the fact that when you challenge this in a way, you already answer like 3 different mechanisms from his speech, because there are different mechanisms, but they are all reliant on the premise, which is characterizing who these PMCs are. Like 1, 2, and 5 are all premising that these PMCs really are local, and when you refute that, you refute most of the argument.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's why this is effective, and then it tackles most of these things. And first point, we also said about that. Even if true, you can also hire your own helpers, translators. I'm not sure why, as an American, you can't hire, how do you say, somebody just to be with the military. Why does that person have to be in the combat role as well? That's even like if there is a third answer even to that, which is remember that the motion says in combat roles. Why can't we hire advisory groups if they're so good? We are going to handle the combat, but let them advise us on the ground or something like this. But let them not fight, and that's it. Like so there's 3 answers, and with these 3 answers, as you said, the Hadar as well. Local cooperation falls, this falls, and 5th falls as well for sure. And that's the effectiveness that this kind of rebuttal can have. Let's quickly then tackle the other points and then move on to the accountability one. So the first point, local cooperation, you already tackled kind of. So one is we already tackling it with who these companies are, but the second response that you already said at the beginning is I'm not sure why US sending PMCs is much different than sending their own military in terms of local cooperation and local resistance towards the US going there. And that's already very, very well effective in tackling that. So most of the points are fallen. What is left standing? Defending oil wells, right?
Yeah.
There is an easy response to defending oil wells. Like you can defend 1 sentence. Can somebody tell me what it is? It again has to deal with the burdens of the motion that I mentioned in the beginning.
It's not a combat role. You can hire to defend oil wells.
Exactly. It's out of the debate. My response is defending oil wells is out of the debate. What else is out of the debate? And I would merge a couple of points. So they mentioned one more point, which I would categorize like this, which is disaster relief and peacekeeping. Disaster relief and peacekeeping, and this completely out of the debate. They're not combat roles. That's not it. This is not the motion, guys. I'm sorry. Like I'm sorry that you have to find out like this, but it's not. So it's literally taking down almost half of their benefits by saying that. So that's why third is important insofar that it tackles most of the benefits, just clarifies to a judge what is or isn't your burden. Rapidly mobilize, we kind of tackling by locality. And 6th, deterrence effect. I don't know. I would probably drop this because they haven't really explained anything here. I don't know. I would not have time.
I wouldn't waste time on this because I think from the get-go, the problem with this case is it's completely symmetric. Like it never at any point explains why you don't get the same deterrence effect from just having foot on ground of the US Army.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like it's not a it's even worse, I would say. Like imagine that like who do you fear most? One small PMC or like the whole United States Army? I'd say you fear more United States Army. I don't like it's a very obvious point to me. But yeah, so with this, we've tackled almost all of his points with regards to effectiveness, and that's down. Like if you say all of these things that we've said now, and I can claim that obviously with some like if you do it correctly, you can do it in like a minute or a minute and a half. I think that's very reasonable to say that all of these can be done in a minute and a half. You just need to be effective in using your words and what we're saying. But everything that we're saying is easy. I don't know. Do you think that's possible, or do you think I'm too ambitious when I say it can be rebutted in a minute and a half?
I think something important to know, just because this whole process looked long right now, because we took the time to dissect this one by one. When it becomes more instinctive, the important thing is not only will you come up with most of these responses fast, but more importantly, you will come up with the prioritization of these responses fast. And this is the big part. You don't have to answer everything, but when you have the list down of all the rebuttals you have in mind, and you notice which part of the argument is more important to respond, but B, which part of the response is most effective, that is answering multiple different layers at one, you're able to do like 1.5 minutes of rebuttal from member, which will be quite effective in taking most of the speech down. And you know what? If you don't have time for the rest, leave it for week. It's fine. But you're able to make a very effective response in a short time when you know what the responses are and how to prioritize between them.
Exactly. And notice that this is with this 1.5 minute, you're kind of responding to like around 3.5 to 4 minutes of his speech. So that's a very effective time spent, because like after this, DPM is in a huge trouble. Like if you do all of these things, DPM is completely fucked because he needs to rebuild everything, and he will just have to pick and choose. You're giving them a very very unfavorable position in this. And as you notice, this is a guy who's one of the top breaking teams, right? It's not a random dude. It's a guy who's like one of the more prominent debaters in the world, like Papa John. So this means that if this is what you can do to his speech in a minute and a half, in theory, if you have this, what can you do to anybody else? Like you can fucking destroy everybody. That's like a kind of encouragement thing, but it's true, right? It is true. Most of the speeches have even less reasons. Just the matter of fact is that EPL speakers usually just sound like they're giving so many things, but when you boil it down, it's very simple. And that's why two important lessons for today and for this exercise is, one, to firstly understand what people are saying and group these thoughts. You cannot, usually what people do is like just do chronologically what they said, but you need to be able to train your brain to fit this into logical categories. So as I said at the beginning, we broke it down into two: effectiveness and then accountability. And then we broke down this effectiveness into a couple of categories and merged some of them and not merge the others. So that's the important part that you need to start practicing itself. The way to practice it on your own is exactly this exercise, right? Exactly this exercise. Just fire up any speech. It doesn't, like, whichever speech you want online, prime minister speech, perhaps, or something, and just be focused on understanding what they're saying and packaging down everything that you need to respond to. And then what I claimed at the beginning, like last tip for mistakes of rebuttal, are solved. Because this is what you say to a judge. You don't explain 30 minutes, 30 seconds what they said. You just said, they've talked about the body bag effect. Here's several reasons towards this. And that's it. I spent 2 seconds explaining what his point is. They talked about the body bag effect. Here's my response. If I sort it down like this, these 6 points, you can read this out in 15 seconds, all of these 6 things. So they have so much time freed up. But in order for that to happen, you need to be able to classify faster. In order to do that, you cannot practice rebuttal on its own. Like as I said, you cannot practice juggling and doing the bike or everything. You just practice juggling. This is juggling for now. So then you just practice to, how do you say, be more concise in terms of what people are saying, and tracking what people are saying and putting it in different boxes. And then the next step is prioritizing these things that they said. What is the most important thing, which we did now with your intuition? Like, is it 4, is it 3, is it 5, or whatever? And you can do this on your own. And the best way to improve is to do this alone, and not in the context of, oh, I'm in the round for fuck, I need to do something. This, you need to you need your brain to understand this process, because if your brain understands this process and gets better at this process, then this becomes intuition. Then this thing doesn't turn off in a stressful situation, but actually manifests and it brings you intuition. And like that's why, for example, like we are doing this very slowly, me and Hadar, but in most cases, like I would like this would be my intuition and immediately I would come up with this. And it's not a magic power, it's just the matter of training your brain to think like this and to do it like this, which is not necessarily the most intuitive thing for a brain to do, because you're listening to a speech chronologically, you're writing things down chronologically, how they happen, and you're the next speaker and have a stressful situation. So that's what you need to practice. Let's do accountability, and then we can call it a day. Accountability. Let's sum up what are the points that he's making. Again, similar to this.
He said about that since like private companies are like businesses, they have like they can have agreement where like they have camera on vests and to not like to control everything and to not like abuse human rights. And this cannot be done with own forces, because there is a motivation of like leaders, generals, to not like give up information about some abuses.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I would separate this into two different points, to be honest. This is even though it sounds like they are connected for sure. While this is how I would sum it up. So first, checks and balances in contract. Example, cameras during combat. And second, countries have incentives to hide abuses while PMCs don't. What are the other things? Like let's see if there's something else that he's talking about. He has at least one more. Let me see if there is more than this. Yeah, there's I think only one more, but correct me if I'm wrong, Khadar.
Depends on how you divide some of the, like, I think number 2 is divided into subpoints, but he has another sort of big point by the end of the speech that was never proven.
I would call it suing them in court, pretty much. I mean, do you think are we thinking of the same thing, right?
I called it black market of PMCs. The thing he said near the end about, but you'll go to the sort of underground kind of ethnic militias, which are much, much worse.
Yo, that I got it out of me because I thought that was completely not proven, so I didn't bother. But black market of PMCs, if we don't allow. Okay, so and suing them in court, to the point that the point was you have to sue a U.S. military in the U.S. military court, and here you can sue them in civilian court. Okay, weird interpretation of how anything works with regards to the law, but okay, that's my answer already to that. But okay, let's. So first, what we see is that he spent less time on accountability than the first one. And less explanations. That's very evident from what he's doing, at least for me. So that's one. So we can also spend less time on this, but let's prioritize it. What is the most important? What are the out of these four? What do you think is the most damaging to us? I tend to agree. Yeah. Countries have incentives to hide abuses while PMCs don't. Okay, let's rebut that. It's a very dubious point in my opinion. So what are his reasons? Why do countries have incentives? Because like these have sub reasons now that we can go into. Why do countries
because
have incentives?
it would like give them a reputation of supporting state-sanctioned terror, like
Yeah. So the way that I would tackle this, and my thought process would be, okay, let's imagine a situation, because that would bring you. So this situation is only relevant when each of these commit. So for this to be relevant, this means the country needs to commit an abuse, and the country needs to commit abuse, and PMCs need to commit an abuse. So let's imagine that in one situation, country commits an abuse, in another situation, PMCs also commit an abuse. So how does this play out? Why does it play out differently? That's not clear from his speech. He says they have reputation to uphold, right? That's one of the things that he's talking about.
Incidentally, PMCs also have reputation to uphold, which was given as a reason as to why they will be transparent, because they want to show that people that will use them, that they are telling about the bad things inside them.
Yeah, they use this. Yeah, they use this. He uses logic that is completely true. Like in one case, for countries, like they have their reputations, so they will hide it and cover up. But in another one, they say mercenaries will be best because they need to uphold their corporate image. Dude, that's the same thing what you just said. It literally is the same. It's a reputation. We call it reputation, and countries want to protect their reputation, and PMCs want to protect their reputation. Why is this not true for football? And that's the first response that I would probably give here. Is there something else?
Sometimes countries just don't commit such violations.
Yeah, when
there are higher risks that if this information will reveal, then everything will be fucked up. So they not hide this information; they just don't commit such things.
Yeah,
I'd be careful with this one though. The reason why it might be risky is if you say countries avoid it in the first place because rationale being countries are more afraid about getting caught. It is somewhat of a concession also to the government logic here. So if the reason why countries won't do it is because they face more precautions for doing it, it also shows why in the first place they have more of an incentive to hide it when it does happen. So a bit of a double-edged sword.
But here is an even effective way, right? Countries hire PMCs. So to some extent, if somebody commits, like if Academy or Blackwater or whatever commits a crime, let's say that their logic, and here is where you play the logic. Here's where you play the logic, their logic against them. You say, okay, you say countries have a huge reputation issue with them being associated with crimes being committed against humanity, right? If PMCs commit crime against humanity, which is hired by the United States, then it doesn't matter if PMCs want to reveal it or not. It's not in the interest of the country to reveal it. So it's symmetrical in that sense as well, if you understand my point. I might be too ESL here. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the same logic. Like I hire, if I'm the United States, I hire that person. If they commit a crime, I'm also responsible. So if insofar that it's true that that the United States wants to hide crimes, they would want to hide crimes of people who did it in their behalf. Simple as that. I don't know why they're not saying that. So even if it's true, so and this is the even if case. So even if judge buys that a company has a higher reputation, so they won't, they won't hide these things, insofar that countries still have the incentive to hide it. It's a non-comparative point. It's irrelevant point. Okay.
I think that the question here is that while companies hire these personnels, they don't reveal this information. It is hidden, and if the company commits some crimes, country doesn't have any impact on their reputation because nobody knows who hired this organization. It's like the whole point of doing this.
But remember that the model, when he says we're going to be super transparent, who is using who, what crimes have been committed, and what is in this. So he in his model concedes, like even if you're correct, he in his model fucks himself up because he said we're going to be super transparent. We're going to have a database of whatever, who is using who, what are they doing, and where are they doing it, right?
Such a nice world.
Yeah. No, but they fucked us. So even if they want to run this point, even if DPM comes up and says this, the DLR would say, "Sorry, dude, you should have come up with a different model. Then you wasted your model on this." But it's true. And like you can't claim that people just don't know, they don't associate, they don't know who it is. But there is a defense against that. You can that's one. By the way, one other thing to notice, even though your rebuttal can have a response towards it, doesn't mean that you should not have it, right? I would still, like, even if that point was true, even if that model part was not true, I would still try to give this point, just in the fact that, okay, I let DPM waste time explaining this. Like, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it's gonna be associated with the United States, and let him address it. He's at the best, he's just wasting time. Then, so it's not all points need to strike at the heart and completely destroy a point for you to have an edge by saying it. Because in this case, if I say it in 10 seconds, and how do you say, DPM has to spend 30 seconds or 40 seconds explaining himself, I already won. I've already got a good point. So that's how you should view rebuttal. It's not just about tackling and going for the heart. It's also trying to force the other person to waste their time and respond. Okay. So that's the second point, right? What about the other ones? What is what's the next most important thing out of the four? Again, just try it. Just think about it. Like, out of the four, you have 1 in 3 chance to succeed. What did you say?
I don't know. All of them, like all the other ones, they sound a bit weird.
Yeah.
Maybe black market has the largest impact if it is like if the judge decides that it is proven.
True, if the judge decides. My intuition says it's 1. It's number 1. I don't know about Hadar.
I think it's number 1. I think number 1 at least has the potential to be proven, even if it wasn't. I think the other two are a bit. I think DPM would abandon them themselves. I would abandon them if I was DPM.
Yeah, I would have been. No, but first one, you can claim, but you have contracts that can mandate this. It's an easy answer as well. It's an easy answer that you can give. You don't have to spend way too much time on any of these other points. I would say that in terms of priority, second one is much more is much above the other 3. But the next one, if I had to pick one, would be the first point. What would be the response to the first point? Like, we can have cameras during combat in contract.
Because if we do the same thing to our soldiers, we can not waste money, which we waste on mercenaries. Like, so if we put cameras in our own soldiers.
Yeah, no, it's a standard thing. Exactly. The first point is good. Whatever you say, cameras. Let's put cameras on our soldiers. I don't care. Like insofar that there exists an incentive not to put cameras on your soldiers, that's the same incentive that PMCs would have, or that you would have for PMCs not to have cameras on their soldiers. So if you want to talk about accountability, again, going into the point, countries don't want, don't want to be held accountable for this. Why would you want this clause? That's the second thing. Like they haven't talked about it in their model. Their point is just, we can't have this in our contract.
Yeah. And I think I know another point. Like, imagine that the mercenary actually that a company, someone from the company actually committed the crime. Yeah. So why can't they fake a footage or something? Because for some amount of money, can't you do the same thing, like fake a footage and make like you like films that are done? They obviously aren't real, so yeah.
It doesn't guarantee that it will be enforced. Yeah, no, I would probably not go into details of they can. I would just call it it's not reliable. I would say that even this doesn't prove that it's super accountable. It just proves that we can do something. It doesn't prove that it will be done, and it doesn't prove that it's going to be effective. What do we do with this footage? Like, what then, or something that's I'm not sure. So. Okay, but I think that point is done. Like, what do we address the other 2 points real quick? It doesn't matter in which order. I think they're both bullshit, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I think that another one is third. And I think why don't use the international courts? Like, because it would be actually better, because it's more transparent, I think, if none of the sides are like, if none of the sides is the host.
Yeah. No, insofar that we can get any accountability, that's what I would say. Insofar that we can get any accountability, it's not based on civil. First of all, that's not how it works. It's not that I can sue in civil court PMC and I cannot sue in civil court this. You will not sue in civil court anyway. You will sue in it exactly as you said, in international court. If somebody commits a human rights abuses, that's where you tackle them. Like where are you going to? Who is going to sue them, and where are they going to sue them at? That's my next question in this sort of situation. How is it going to happen? So it's a very like minor legalistic point that I don't get why is it relevant. I don't know. It's not true. Like it's just it's not like if PMC commits a war crime against your family and like kills your brother, you can go into civil court in the United States and now sue them, but you can't do that to an American soldier because you need to go to their military courts. Military courts are for internal military disputes. That's the first thing. So it's between two soldiers. You don't sue as a person. You don't sue in the military court at all. But that doesn't mean that the soldier cannot be sued, or that somebody cannot be sued for it. You just sue the United States government in a general court. or you that's not how anything works. so that my response to that point is place rather than anything else. But I might even drop it because like it's not important. It's a stupid point. Maybe just as a precaution if a judge likes an EPL team or something. But let's do the last point then. Black market. Hadar, it's your favorite point, so go ahead.
Would definitely drop it from air law, would leave it maybe for deputy if it becomes a big deal. I think the crux of the response to this is basically, as a country, there are two options. Either I want a good PMC or I want a bad PMC because I want to commit atrocities. If it's the former, I have literally no idea why the black market will lead to me choosing the bad actors. Like, if they claim that the current sanctions are ineffective and they still enable the bad PMCs to happen, sounds like the quote-unquote good PMCs can also still happen and are also not sufficiently regulated against, and these are the actors that I will go to in the black market. But if my incentive is, and this is usually the case with the sort of people who go to the ethnic militias, if my incentive is to do war crimes, I am not going to get satisfied by having a regulated market of PMCs where I'm only allowed to do good stuff with PMCs. I am still going to go to the black market. I have no idea how the motion solves it.
Exactly. And what the fuck is the black market of PMCs? I haven't heard like that's such a complex operation that you like. How do you even do this? That's my second point. Like how do you conduct this? Like that's then secret agents, but then you're not doing this by PMCs. You're doing this by CIA or some of these agents. How the fuck do PMCs have to do anything with this? That would be my point. Like how does that Iraq with illegal PMCs or do something? I don't get it. So it's a stupid point, to be honest.
The important point here, though, because this is a common tendency I notice, don't be tempted to answer the stupidest points first. I know it's easiest, and you almost want to do it because you feel this inner rage where you want to explain why it's stupid, but most likely this is not going to be the winning point, and if you don't have time to rebut it at all, it's going to be fine. Answer the strongest parts first.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, exactly, exactly. I agree. But this is so the point of this exercise was just to illustrate the thought process, right? So as I said, during the speech itself, you will have to do this simultaneously, and that's very hard. In order to make yourself better, you need to practice what we just did, right? Break it down. First, let's track. Let's just track. And my suggestion is also to increase the difficulty, and this is something that we will be working on for Belgrade WDC, like a training program that we want to do, which is literally creating these exercises that would just tackle these particular things. But like, if you want a teaser of where I'm thinking at the moment, is literally, as I said, fire up a speech, and at the beginning, just focus on this. Just do, like as I said, 20 minutes if you have to, until you get every point that somebody's saying. But then the next time you do it faster, you do it in the real time, so you don't pause, you don't have anything like this. Or if you want a bigger challenge, you do it on the speed increase. So for example, play this speech, but not this because you already done this speech. Play this speech on 1.25 or 1.5 or something like this. So you're training your brain. You're training your brain to do harder things, like kind of like a gym, like you're basically training with higher weights. And if you want to increase the difficulty even more for tracking and for doing this exercise, just as I said, then give yourself additional simultaneous tasks. For example, first focus on time, improving your time, and how you deal with the stressful situation. But then the next time, the harder difficulty would be, at the same time while you're listening to somebody's speech, write your own speech, and then you at the same time need to track plus write your speech, and then see how it goes. Right? You will struggle at the beginning, but that's the point. The point is to isolate the skill and isolate the muscle that you need to, how do you say, learn how to rebut. Then the next thing, as we said, is to prioritize. Once you've tracked everything, you need to be able to reason with yourself and to logically come to the conclusions. Why is 4 more important than 2? So it's not just the intuition. It's not just, I think 4 is more important, but sit down and really think about it. Like, really, like, why is 4 more important than 2? And basically, it's debating about debating. It's like a meta thing. So you're giving yourself reason why something should be prioritized over something. You can sit down with your partner and discuss this. So maybe you have a different thing. So for example, you rank them by order. You order them by something or something this, and your partner has something else, and then you have a discussion. And the point of this, all of these things is, even though it doesn't sound, your brains usually like very easy tasks that make you feel very good, which is like, I do a speech, I've done a lot, or I do a spar debate, I've done a lot. So that's kind of like a productivity faking. You feel like you're doing a lot, but actually you're not really improving because you're doing the same thing over and over again, and that's not the way to debate. That's not the way to improve. So you need to break down the skills that you want to improve at, and that's the philosophy that I want to instill in you guys. So pick one. So let's say that the beginning, are you struggling with tracking? Tackle that issue. Just practice this one. Just practice this one muscle in this sort of situation, and isolate it. Don't do it at the same time. Don't at the same time write rebuttal. Don't at the same time do it during the tournament or during the spar. You need to do it. You need your brain to just focus on this one task, because otherwise you go into your, as I call it, monkey brain, which is literally panic mode. I need to do a speech. What is happening? Let me go. So that let's turn off these switches or something. So it needs to become an intuition, and the way to become an intuition is to isolate it and to practice it like this. So that's what I wanted to convey today as well. But yeah. I mean, I think we're kind of done, right? It's been also 2 hours, which is quite enough time.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thanks. So like we took time here to analyze each point, yes? But as far as I know, in debates, it's kind of less time we have.
Yeah.
What to do in this situation?
So that's exactly and precisely my point. It's so imagine that you don't know how to play a violin, right? Or don't know how to play guitar or whatever. What you're trying to do at the moment is you're trying to go to a symphonic orchestra and play with them immediately at the same time, and you don't know shit. The way that you practice to go into symphonic orchestra to play violin is you play a part very slowly. slowly, and then you start to increase, and then you start to increase, and then you start to increase, and then when you go there, you don't suck. It's not a sound that people want to that people want to die when they hear it. It's a good sound, right? Oh, that's a guitar, nice, nice.
Mhm.
Artem can demonstrate, but anything that you want to learn needs to start by you learning it slowly in order to increase. So my point is, if you constantly do this and improve on the speed itself, then you will get to the point where in debate it will become much faster for you. But in order to get to that point, you cannot immediately jump toward fifth gear because you turn off many of these things. So that's why I'm saying first tackle one point very slowly and then increase the difficulty as it goes. As I said, first time you watch a debate and speech, first couple of times, you do it 30 minutes. Return to it, watch it twice, so to make sure that you have this correctly. Next time that you do it in 15 minutes. Let's say first time you give yourself half an hour. Next time you give yourself 15 minutes. Third time you do it real time. You do it in 7 minutes, and you see if you're still struggling, then you return to the more slower pace or something. So you go and you test yourself and you practice at the pace where you're comfortable at, and start to increase the pace. So once you get comfortable at one speed, then you can move on to the higher difficulty. And the point is to always increase this difficulty. For example, for the third type, as I told you, one last time to explain it, I think rebuttal has four parts of the skill that you're using. First part is tracking, and which is what we did today, which is you need to understand what other people are saying. You need to classify them where it belongs, even if it's a messy speech. And that's the thing, right? Like even if people are talking all over the place, you need to classify, you need to know what they were saying. Second thing that you need to do is then prioritize these things. And that's the second thing that we've done. So you have a list of things that people have said. You need to do from 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, label them. That can also be done by a speedy way, right? At the beginning, you give yourself, again, 100% of the time. You do it in 15 minutes, talk about it, think about it, do it and then give yourself less time. So give yourself 7 minutes, then give yourself 5 minutes, then give yourself 3, until you get to the point where in 30 seconds, for example, you can order the full list in like, well, okay, 1, 2, 3, similar, like if you would to do a crossword puzzle, like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the important part. But that's the point, is to approach training debating same way that you would approach training any particular skill. And that's what we're missing in debating, in my opinion. We're trying to play in the orchestra while we don't know how to play anything on the violin. And that's the point. Or we know very basic stuff. And the third thing is how to come up with the responses. My thinking of an exercise is, once you've prioritized, once you've said, these are the top 5 things that I need to respond to, take all of these 5 things, and for each of these 5 things, give yourself an impossible task of coming up with, let's say, 5 reasons why one thing is untrue. You will never do these 5 reasons in real debate, but you're forcing your brain to think about it in that way, to find different solutions and different answers. So let's say that on the first point, as I said, we came up pretty much with 5 answers. And if you find it super easy, then increase the difficulty, do it in 7 reasons, do it 10 reasons or something. The point is to practice coming up with several layers of attack in that sort of situation. And again, you can time it. You can be like, at the first time, I'll give myself to give 5 reasons. I'll give myself unlimited time. Next time, let's do it in 15 minutes. The third time, let's do it in 7 minutes. And then until you get to the point where you can think of 5 reasons in 30 seconds or even in real time. That's the point where you want to go your brain. The mentality is always pick where your situation, current level of skill is, and then practice it by increasing the difficulty itself. And the fourth one is delivery and time management. So how you deliver these points in this sort of situation. And that's the easiest one to practice, in my opinion, which is literally just once you write this all down, just deliver a speech. First of all, again, give yourself unlimited time, do it however much time you want. Then do it in like 3 minutes, but then if you fail, then then repeat the same speech, then repeat the same rebuttal that you've done in 2 minutes, with cutting off some of the unnecessary time or something like this. So you can practice that as well. But the mentality is the important. Mentality is you grasp what your level of knowledge is, and then you practice that level of knowledge until by increasing the difficulty, until you get to a point where this is a second nature to you. So that's the point. You can, there is no magic trick, rather than just doing it gradually. Sorry if this took a bit more to explain, but yeah.
So basically practice.
Yeah, no, basically practice, but practice smart. That's more important. Like it's not a cop-out answer. Like I just practice. I think most of the people practice by trying to break the wall by banging their head against it. You're never gonna break the wall like this. You're gonna break the wall by training. I don't know, to break the walls or whatever. Metaphor is stupid. So okay, yeah, but that's my point.
Small note on that. That is true not only for the practices you do home, but also for your practices when you actually do spa debates. Focus on one skill at a time. I remember in my second year, I had a big issue with doing like this shopping list of reasons for why an argument is true, which was never actually leading to me doing the in-depth explanation for each one, kind of like the speech we just saw. And my coach basically gave me the following instruction. For the next month, you make 1 point per speech, one mechanism per point for 7 minutes. And I took so many fourths until I learned how to analyze, because I forced myself to do it this way. Focus on the skill that you want to improve.
Yeah, you need to break it down. And this is how to break it down for rebuttal. And hopefully we will also come up with a series in the next couple of months, which we will also outline this in a video format. Yeah. Okay. But guys, that's it. I need to sadly return to work now in Friday evening, which is a horrible thing. But I'm very glad that I spent this 2 hours with you, and I hope you learned a lot. And see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Good night,
Very
everyone.
much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.